Hi, welcome to the first official video on Stephen Foster's YouTube channel. I am Stephen Foster. I'm the writer and director of Ghost Stories, The Dub, and that's what this channel is all about. Welcome aboard. Quick word before we start. Ghost Stories was recorded in 2005, which was a long time ago. So there's language in here that could be offensive to some people nowadays. If that's you, I would just like to encourage you to remember these are characters of fiction. They're made up, they're horrible, terrible, awful characters of fiction, but they're fictional characters nonetheless. So I hope that's some kind of comfort to you. For those of you who've just stumbled upon this video and have no idea what Ghost Stories is, this is the quick 411. Shorthand, Ghost Stories is a Japanese anime. The 20 episode series ran from October 2000 to March 2001. It had okay ratings, not great. And it did have a really good lead-in time slot, so I think they had high hopes for it, but nevertheless it was canceled after one season. It was basically a middling show about, it was kind of like a Scooby-Doo knockoff, but with a cat instead of a dog, and the kids were in elementary school, they weren't in high school or college. What were Scooby-Doo gang? What were they? Were they in college or high school? I don't remember. I don't know. Did they ever tell us? I don't think they ever told us. In 2004, the company I worked for, ADV Films, licensed that property from the Japanese. I was charged with writing and directing the English dub. I guess the best way you could say it is it came into the shop middle of the road anime, but when I finished, it was name dropping, culture bombing, political satire, black comedy hit piece that attacked every race, creed, religion, color, sexual preference, sex, gender, everything. It was an equal opportunity offender. That stuff's maybe a little controversial today. But back then, the only controversy was that the script had changed so much from its original form. But the controversy was limited only to like a small group of fans, but not very many, but they were loud, they were very vocal. And that's pretty much where the controversy stayed and ended. It was a modest hit when it came out. The reviews were good. A lot of people liked it. It actually won Dub of the Year that year, so that was kind of a surprise and nice. Well, and then I pretty much forgot about it. Except I would be reminded of it when 2 or 3 of the actors who went to conventions, I know Monica Rial did and Greg Ayers did, but they would come to me when they'd come back from a convention and they'd say like, wow, dude, I mean, there's so many people that ask about Ghost Stories and they have the DVDs and they want me to sign them and stuff like that, and they have a ton of questions about the show. And so I was like, oh, well, that's nice. And so, you know, we moved on. I moved on. I mean, I didn't think anything about it at the time, but once again, the anime crowd was ahead of everybody else in figuring out what the cool thing was. And that happened in 2014, almost a full decade when Ghost Stories was first recorded. For some unknown reason, I mean, I've looked and I can't find one, it blew up on YouTube. It becomes this phenomenon. There were full episodes on YouTube, and there were some compilations, one of which was one called Ghost Stories Funny Moments 1 of 3, because this guy named El Rio had cut together all the lines. And there are a lot of funny lines in the show, so he just did an extensive editing job. Someone sent me the link, and I was like, oh, wow, it had like 50,000, I think, or maybe 500,000 views on it. And I was like, oh, well, that's really nice. And it took it like, 10 years to get that many views. And I would check in on it every once in a while. And the numbers started increasing like a lot. And I was like, oh, this would be really cool if it got to 1 million. And then it goes to 1 million. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's just amazing. 10 years later, everyone goes like, it's wonderful. And then it gets to 2 million, and then 3 million, and then 4 million. And it's at 656,500,000, about there. It was taken down. I think because it had the end song in it. And, that's a no-no. Because I think Sony owns the music and you can't have any music on YouTube. My God, don't have any music on YouTube. And that was it. But then everybody else started making compilations and putting episodes up, and they kept taking them down and putting them up and taking them down, putting them up and taking them down. And finally, I guess they just gave up. Now, to this day, they're over like 200, 300 compilation videos, clips, retrospectives, reviews, arguments, debates, analyses, reaction videos alone are a cottage industry unto itself. There are too many memes to count. 1 drinking game and 2 rap odes, I believe, to the show. So it's just been crazy. It's just been nuts. People who don't like dubs love Ghost Stories. People who don't watch anime watch Ghost Stories. It's just crazy. I mean, it's crazy. If you search for Ghost Stories on YouTube, it won't only just continue the typing for you, it'll take you to a video that either has like 7 million views on it, or one that was loaded probably in the last hour or two. As you can imagine, that's incredibly flattering and super humbling to all of us who worked on the show, the cast and me included, and the engineer. So it's been really, really lovely. I mean, it's comedy canon now. It's crazy what y'all have taken this show and made it. You take lines and you make them your own and use them in your own life. A line from the show, "Just fill the whole filler," is turned into in the comment section. Just comment on the video commenter. But there'll be people that post and send me stuff about that, how they like always say this line, or this is like in their circle now, and this is a go-to for them, and it's just really lovely. It's just really, really nice. It's such a high compliment. Thank you so much. But the popularity and the novelty of ghost stories means that there's been a whole like mythology that's grown up around the show. Some things are true, and some things are not. And it seems like the best way to start the channel is to address all those issues, which is why this video is called Truth Revealed, Lies Exposed, Myths Debunked, and Misconceptions Straightened Out Once and for All. And we'll get into that after this brief message.
Sweet Jesus! The Earth is in grave danger. Is mankind destined for extinction? That'd be bad. Don't miss next week's exciting episode of Fisting South Star. I mean, the Fist of South Star!
No, there's not going to be a show on my channel called Fisting South or the Fist of South Star. That's just a semi-doctored clip from a show I did called the Super Milk Chan Show. I think it's out of print now. But people are always asking, where can we find another Dub Like Ghost Stories? And Milk Chan's probably the closest thing to it. In my work, it could very easily be called like a dress rehearsal for ghost stories, because I had to change that pretty extensively. And if you're thinking about the Cartoon Network version, the one that aired on Adult Swim, do not think of that one. That's not the version they aired. There was another version. They aired this one that was faithful to the script, and it bombed. It was like a horrible, horrible, horrible flop. And I told him, I said, don't let them license that one. License mine. At least it makes sense. And what's the line in broadcast news that Holly Hunter says? The guy says to her,
"It must be nice to always believe you know better. To always think you're the smartest person in the room."
No, it's awful.
As far as the mythology goes, there are basically like 9 kind of statements or beliefs about the show. There may be a couple others here and there, but these are the ones that seem to be most quoted all the time and most cited as this is the real thing. So let's start at the bottom and we'll work our way to the top. And just a warning, we're not going to get to all of them today. So just chill out on that. But let's do number 9 right now. Number 9, Ghost Stories was the first abridged dub ever produced. That is a misconception. Or is it true? In all my totally non-scientific research that I did on this topic, I found several sources of information. I did find one that was the most comprehensive as far as like in one place tackling the subject. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but this is the one I found that was most informative, I would say. And it's from a website that I've never seen before. It's called The Artifice, and it's really a good site. They have a lot of neat stuff on there. And an anime section. And that's where I found this. True, Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series was the first to use the Abridged series label, but the ADV dub of Ghost Stories was released in 2005. The writer doesn't put the year of Yu-Gi-Oh! Here, which is interesting. He puts it later in the article, but that year it came out was 2006. However, various gag dubs of cartoons and films were floating around the internet years prior to the release of Ghost Stories. Mortal Kombat and The Matrix Reloaded were humorously dubbed over by an artist named Knox on Newgrounds.com in 2003. A profanity-laced parody of the 1990s X-Men was released in 2005. But Fensler's gag dubs of those infamous G.I. Joe PSAs predates both of them, surfacing on the internet in 2003. But these aren't officially anime. The G.I. Joe parody, as mentioned previously, was created by Eric Fensler, who had a few shorts he shopped around festivals. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was created by Martin Bellany, who goes by Little Kurobo on the internet. So that's Eric Fensler and Martin Bellany, aka Little Kurobo. It wasn't long before other abridged series began popping up on YouTube. Vegeta3986 and Masako X produced Naruto, the abridged series, after they saw Little Kurobo's Yu-Gi-Oh! Shortly after that came HBI2K, who, after lacking the patience to write a novel, made Berserk Abridged. Lanapator started his abridging career after receiving a rugby injury, which is when he jumped on the bandwagon with Yu Yu Hakusho Abridged. Got all that? So that's Vegeta 3986, HBI2K, and Lanapator. And while this was the most comprehensive document I found in my exhaustive research, they neglected to mention such luminaries as Team 4-Star, who of course is responsible for the Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. As you can see, they stopped producing those years ago. That's 2020 minus 11 equals 9, which would put its genesis in 2009, a full 4 years after Ghost Stories. The article also missed Crayon Shinchan, which I find a particularly interesting case. Funimation, located a mere 5 hours from Houston, licensed Shinchan in 2006, a year after Ghost Stories. Now, ADV actors worked at Funimation, and years ago I heard that they were saying, there was this rumor going around that they told me that Funimation was like showing Ghost Stories as an example of like what to like amplify or something. And I thought that was bullshit. I just thought that was just bullshit, just actor gossip or whatever. I just didn't believe it. But then I see this. They had a joke about Ashley Simpson. Ashley Simpson. Why does that sound so familiar to me?
Maybe it was just mass hysteria, a kind of group panic. You know how one group of people think one thing happened when actually that thing they think happened didn't happen at all. Like Ashley Simpson singing at a concert. What?
So there's that. I'm just saying. He says in the end it's hard to say who started it. But that's not what his article says. Which is strange. And when I started researching this, one, I didn't care. And two, what does it matter who started it? But the more I looked at it, the more I started to care, because it looked like, it was looking like, from what he says, 2005 was when it started, and that was Ghost Stories, the first one, except for the non-anime ones that were before that, the joke dubs, but that wasn't anime. So it looks like to me that maybe the Ghost Stories was the first anime abridged. I don't know, but the fans were saying it, and the fans continue to say it, so maybe they're right. I don't think it was the first, because that wasn't an abridged series. I mean, that's not what we were trying. And abridged is really like the fans do that, or just regular old people just grab it and do it. Regular people, like fans, are different. But the anime crowd does that. But this was Ghost Stories was a formal studio done dub. So I mean, you could say it's different and all that, but I mean, it was still a produced dub. So it kind of really wasn't the first anime bridged dub. So probably not. Maybe so. I don't know. That's up for the wiser people to debate than me. I'm only bringing it up because even when it looks like it is that, or even the calendar like says it is, these anime nerds who hate me will twist themselves into knots so they don't have to give me a compliment. So they don't have to give me any credit or props. And I just think that's funny. I just think that's funny. Number 8, the Ghost Stories dub was so popular, it was translated back into Japanese. That's a myth. If someone did that, it's not like a huge thing or something like that that's well known. It's like underground and bootleg, because no one seems to have heard anything about it. It's a rumor that goes around. People like support it, but no, it's flattering that they would think so. But I mean, they wouldn't get it anyway. There's so many dated references in there now. Half the people that watch it now have to have like a Wikipedia right by them to like go, who is it? What does it mean, Madonna on a sketchy horse? And so they're they wouldn't get it. So I don't really see how they would. They wouldn't get a lot of it, put it that way. So I don't see why they would have it translated in Japanese for them, because a lot of the jokes would just go over their heads. Number 7. The first actor in the booth that day set everything up, and everyone else had to follow their lead. Well, we're going to have to put a pin in that one and come back to it, because it's related to another one that's on the list, and we'll just cover that all together in one fell swoop. Number 6. Japan told us we had to match the lip flaps. Okay, that's a lie, because it was our job to do that. That was what we were a dub company. We excelled at that. I was giving a talk to the Texas Library Association years ago, and because they were trying to get anime in the schools, and I showed some clips, and this one lady says, "Oh, were these not originally in English?" And I said, "No, they were in Japanese originally. We dubbed them into English." And she goes, "Oh, I would have never known." And I was like, "That's the point." So dubbing was that lip syncing was our forte. So we were perfect. We were great at it. So no, they didn't have to tell us that. That would be like hiring someone to paint your house and then saying, "Don't forget to paint the house." So no, that's a lie. Number 5, Japan said we could not change the way the ghosts were put to spiritual sleep. That's a misconception. We couldn't change the way they were put in the show because it's animated. We weren't going to do new animation. I changed up the spells. But we didn't change the way they died. It's animated, so you couldn't. So that's kind of a misconception, but people think it's true. Number 4, I had to keep all the names of the characters. That is true. Although, and I even said it in my book that I wrote, that it was one of the tenets, but I just don't remember them doing that. I thought I could because I remember Leo gave me a question. I was like, well, why is Leo like an American sounding name, but the others are very Japanese? And so I was wondering, should I change Leo's name or whatever like that? So I wound up just keeping all the names as is because I didn't see a reason to change them. The names are fine. Number 3, I had to keep the names of the ghosts. That is true. Totally true. 100% true. And why would I change them? I did have the characters call them like the Babasari, she called her Barbara Streisand, and things like that. But no, why would I change them? They're fine, and that's what the ghosts are named because they're based on Japanese folklore. It'd be the same thing as if we did a cartoon on Bigfoot and Japan licensed it. And would they really change the name from Bigfoot? No, because it's a legend from the States. It just kind of doesn't make sense. So that one is totally true. Number 2, the original ghost stories was a big success in Japan. Another way of saying this, and there are a lot of them that say this now because a couple of people with YouTube channels have said it, Steven pushed a false narrative that it was a flop. This is a misconception, and this is just plain bullshit. This one's going to get a little complicated because you're going to have to go into my history a little bit as far as like in the industry and what I was doing and what my reputation was. I had a reputation for an adaptive approach to the scripts, shall we say. Not all of them, but some of them. And I did it with my first, I had a couple of titles. I had Those Who Hunt Elves. I did it there, but it was such a low title, no one really had heard of it, and so no one really cared. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. There was one review that said it was funnier than the original Japanese was. I did the same thing with Generator Gaul, which is where Vic Mignogna got his first part. That one, it wasn't addressed there because Gaul wasn't a very big title either. But then I got Orphan, which was a huge fan title. And I changed it there because at that time it was like the golden, the boom of anime when it was right after the Pokemon explosion and anime was, everyone was wanting anime and every company who had it wanted it on television. So that's why I was hired. The directive of me being hired was, want you to make the scripts more accessible to a Western audience. And I was like, okay, I can do that, I think. And so when Orphan came out, it was like a little bit of a ruckus was made. Actually, one of the lovely fangirls in the office walked by and said, like, man, the fans hate you, which I was like, why? So that was my introduction to fan culture right there. That was my first introduction to fan culture. The second one was reading a conversation online about how these two guys wanted to crucify me, which was weird. And I didn't think they were going to do anything, but the fact that they didn't do it because I had 2 kids was really disturbing. I was like, how did they know I had kids? And 2, I guess thanks, my being a father saved me. I don't know. It's weird. So I pulled it back. And I asked them specifically, my bosses, I said, do you want this as a blanket thing? Or are we going to do this the whole thing? Do you want me to pull back on everything? And they're like, no, just Orphan. Keep the same mandate, everything, just Orphan. You need to stick a little closer. And I was like, okay, because I didn't care. And so I put Easter eggs in the DVD that said, that we revoiced some of the lines from the characters. It said Steven's not going to change the script so much and he's sorry for it, blah. And stuff like that to make fun of it because I was genuinely I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings or make anybody mad. I was just doing what I was told to do. And then when I was told not to, I didn't. Basically, in that job, I was serving 3 masters. I had to serve my bosses who wanted me to make it more westernized. I had to serve the work itself because that's some other artist's work and it's not my work. I'm just a shepherd of it. I'm just taking it from here and giving it to this, making it presentable to this audience. Despite what my critics say, or the rabid fanboys who don't like me say, I did stay with the original essence of the script. I mean, I didn't change anything if it was except for Ghost Stories. If it was an action comedy, it stayed an action comedy. If there was a character that like cussed a blue streak, he still cussed like a blue streak. I didn't turn him into a pope or something. I mean, so but I would get like yelled at for changes, like, you know, the translation would be, "You look very pretty in that blue dress, my dear," and I would change it to, "Man, you look so bitchin' in that blue dress. It's so hot." Because I got to match the lip flaps. And if you think that's dramatically changed from the other line, well, I'm sorry, but I had to match the lip flaps. There are a couple of hurdles to doing this. But I would get sometimes unfairly maligned and sometimes maligned, but it was my job. But I didn't say that. I never told that. I was a good company man, and I just let everybody think that it was me running wild, running free around the studio, just doing whatever the fuck I wanted to. So because I didn't want the company to take a hit, I didn't want the company as a whole so it'd be better if like everyone just thought it was me, and that way they could keep funneling me these problem shows. And it would be like, oh, that's just Steven. He's, you know, we set him aside. He's a different entity. He's a special case. And they wouldn't like be mad at the company so much as they would be mad at this person. I mean, I changed the script. They were so. I'm in the Urban Dictionary, for God's sake. It's called fosterization. I don't agree with the definition because that's not what I did. I didn't do it for fun or kicks or whatever. I did it because I thought it could be improved on and that I could make it better. And it's debatable if you think I made it better or not, but I believe Ghost Stories is a good example of what I can do to a show. But they gave me every single special project that came into the shop. I mean, there was Sin was an original production that I worked on. When the Appleseed franchise came from Sony, they wanted me to do it. When Halo came in with their anime series, I was the one drafted to do it, write and direct it. In fact, there was a stupid panty comedy that they gave me, and I was like, well, I'll do something with this. And I reworked it and so much that I wound up going to New York and living at MTV for a while because MTV wanted to spin it off into a show for the Spike Network. And we were getting close to it, and then Spike Lee sued the network over the name, and so that ended that. I mean, I wrote and directed the first and only American Anime Awards, for God's sake. They even had me do that piece of shit Starship Troopers movie when it came in, and that was awful. I couldn't save that one. Jesus couldn't save that one. And my shows always sold over projections. So if there was something I was doing wrong, they would have cut me off at the knees in a heartbeat because it's always about the money. I mean, in any situation, it's always about we're a capitalist society, and we see that this is causing some problems somewhere in places. But it's always about the money. So, you know, no, I made them money. So they were like, yeah, you keep doing what you're doing, dude. You just had to keep up the good work. Because why wouldn't they? The complaints were relatively small. They're vocal, but small, because most of the people were like still buying it and still liking it. But yeah, it's always about the money. Which brings us back to this whole thing about Steven lying about it being a flop. Now, I might have said it was boring too. I don't know how anyone would have heard me say it was boring, but I did definitely say it was a flop. The actors might have called it boring, and that's fine. And other people can call it boring they want. And most people do when they see the original, they do think it's boring. But I called it a flop because it was a flop. Financially, it was, I mean, they've dug up the ratings for this thing and said they were really good, but then someone else chimed in and go like, I'm from Japan and I work in television. These aren't really great ratings. And so, you know, whether they were good ratings or bad, I don't care. They supposedly had, some people say it had a really good lead-in. Others say it wasn't a great lead-in. The company behind it they were so great, and they did do great stuff. Okay, I don't care about that either. The show only lasted one season, and if it was successful, we would still be seeing Ghost Stories to this day. Harry Potter, sequels out the ass. The Golden Compass, not a one, because it tanked. That didn't make the money like Ghost Stories. Either they had, I don't know, because I'm not privy to that information, but what I do know is they told me, do what you can to sell the show. We just want to recoup some of our investment, which means it didn't make money for them. Now, their expectations could have been really high. I don't know. The check they had to write the original author might have been too high. That made it cost prohibitive to continue doing the show. But whatever, that was the reason why it didn't show. And that's when I said flop, that's what I meant. And if people wouldn't have had such a hard on to paint me as the bad guy, they would have realized, yeah, oh, well, you know, only one season. I guess it flopped to somebody. So It's a lie. I did not push any narrative. That's what they told me. Now, they may have lied to me. Why would they? I don't think so. And I think psychology enters into this a lot. Like, I know how it affects me when someone, I say I like something and someone says, oh, I didn't like it. And I go like, you automatically think, you're like, well, am I stupid? Or are they calling me stupid? Or do I not have right taste? Or what, what's the deal? And you can't you can't help but take it personally. But you shouldn't. It's just, I mean, again, because this is what, at least the dialogue that goes on in my head. No, Stephen, you're not stupid, and no, your taste isn't wrong. They don't like it, and you do. Or I don't like it, and they do. It's just we all have different strokes. I mean, it's just ridiculous that people got in a tizzy about this, or that they were so offended that they thought I was dogging or ragging on a Japanese anime. It's the original anime, which I wasn't. I was given a job to make it better, and that's what I did. It just speaks to how I was always anime's favorite punching bag, and I've been retired for like 10 years, and I'm still anime's favorite punching bag. Well, the punching bag is punching back. And the number one tenet about ghost stories is, we're going to have to come back to that. Sorry, we've run out of time, but we're going to do it. Look for the other video. It's called The Biggest Myth Revealed, but it may not be a myth. It may be something else. I'm just saying it's a myth. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'm sorry for all the ums and the uhs and the edits. As I said on my first video, I'm lousy on camera. I'm trying to get better, and thank you all for not putting that in the comments about how much I suck on camera. Until next time, do something nice for somebody. It makes you feel better. Because it was our job to do that. That was what we were a dub company. We excelled at that. I gave a talk to Texas Library Association one time because they were trying to get anime in the libraries. My God, don't let... I'm sure they're not trying to now with all this ruckus about, the sex books that the kindergartens are reading. Get off the librarian's back, people. What the fuck? I mean, your kids are not being inundated by porn or black history. Just knock it off. None of us like to admit we're wrong, but I'm always afraid of looking like the stupid one, so I always say, well, I'm wrong, I don't know this. But that was like when I worked at ADV, that was kind of a thing. It was, we'd go in these meetings and there would be, everyone was there and everybody's mother, and people were talking, and it was just a waste of time for me because I don't know what we were doing there. But people were like pontificating. You know how people like to hear themselves talk, and so they were like hearing themselves talk, and they would just make up shit. They would talk about anime stuff, which I didn't know at the time. Now I do know stuff, but at then I was a virgin to it. So they would talk about things, but then they'd also talk production stuff, and that's my background. And so, because ADV was a little fledgling operation, they were just starting, and they were like, there were some posers in the group, and so, but they would like say stuff, and I'd go like, this is bull. I know they're making this shit up because I know that's not how it works. Like, one director said that, not one director, someone at the company said that, oh yeah, all the sound is done ADR these days in movies. Only like 5% is captured really live. They all do it ADR in the studio after the movie's shot. And I was like, no, they don't. That's not true. That's not true. So I say that and tell him, but embarrass him. But no, that's not true. So one of the outside producers that worked with the company knew someone or whatever they wanted. There was someone who wanted a video game, and they wanted our actors to do the mocap for it. So, I wasn't going to let the actors go alone. So I went along to make sure the actors were taken care of and that they weren't doing anything untoward, or they wouldn't like make them work 80-hour weeks or something like that, or 12-hour days or something. So, and everything was going fine, and we went there, and I don't even know if the video game was ever really finished produced or whatever like that, but the guys did a great job. And it was Andrew Love, David Matranga, and Adam Wagner, I think. And the one time I left the set, and I did have to say no, they can't do that or whatever like that. So, because they wanted them to be like stunt people. And I was like, no, you need to hire someone else for that. These guys are not stuntmen. You can't make them do that. That's not their job. They're going to hurt themselves. No, you can't let them do that. So it's a good thing I went, because they had them doing bungee jumps and shit like that all over the place. And sure enough, the one time I left the set to go get something, I think I went to store something to get some supplies for this, like food for them or something like that. Because, I'm not this big fancy director who's not going to get anything, because I clean toilets at ADV, for God's sake. And sure enough, the one time I left the set, I came back and they had there was cameras all around because it was 360 because it was a mocap studio, a real fancy one, and they had the floor had risers on it, so they would come up out of the ground, so you could like do different levels. And I walk in and one of them's jacked up really high, like 12 feet or something like that, 20 feet, and David Matranga, I think it was David. I think it was David Matranga. And they had him up on the thing, and they wanted him to like jump down or something like that. And I was like, hold on, hold it. No, you cannot make these guys. No, you can't ask these guys to do that. They're stunt people. You need to cough up the money and pay for stunt people if you want to do that. Because they just, stunt people they're trained to take roles in hits like that. That's their job. And they were just trying to get off with not spending money by having the actors do it. And I was like, so it's a good thing I went, because sure enough, they were trying to be weaselly and get them to do work that wasn't their job. So I'm just saying, you always got to watch the contracts, and you always got to watch out, because people will take you for everything you got. It's business, which is why capitalism is bad. So yeah, it's a good thing I went, because you got to watch them close. Those Japanese are crafty. I'm kidding. It's not racist. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding.